George, you're going to be talking about the expert's guide to direct consumer strategies.
Buddy, everyone doing okay? We've decided in a change to usual conferences, instead of getting absolute beginners, we've got experts along to talk to us about direct consumer strategy. So if our experts could come and join us on the stage now, that would be fantastic. And get yourself a panel full of actual experts who are also willing to do some physical labour. That's always wonderful to see. So before we get started with the conversation, we'll just do a quick round of introductions. I'm George Osborn. I'm the founder of Half Space Consulting, a strategic communications consulting company working within the games industry. I'm the founder of video games industry Memo, the weekly explainer of all things video games, and the author of the forthcoming book, Power Play, the inside story of how video games influence the world. And what we're going to do is we're going to go from left to right to introduce our panelists, and this is left.
Thank you so much. My name is Hussam Hammo, founder and CEO of Tamatem Games. We're a mobile games publisher in the Arabic-speaking market in the Middle East, and we also enable direct-to-consumer payments in the Middle Eastern market.
Hey guys, I'm Maor, CEO, founder of Appcharge. I've been in the industry for over 10 years. Appcharge, we're the only platform, direct-to-consumer platform that combines both payments on scale and a deep understanding of monetization. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm David Stelzer. I'm the president of Xsolla. For those who don't know, Xsolla's been around almost 20 years at this point. And we specialize in helping companies to monetize. So basically, we help developers and publishers to make more money. And then on the direct-to-consumer side, we help them keep more of that money that they make.
And I'm Tayber Voyer. I'm the CEO of A Thinking Ape Games. We've been making games since roughly 2009. We have 6 games in the market right now, hundreds of thousands of users, about 80 employees. And we're also part of Deca Games, and I'm the head of growth for Deca Games as well. And we've been doing direct-to-consumer payments for the last about 2.5 years, working with Xsolla, and now maybe working with Appcharge too. I think that we're the pretty girl at the dance, and these two are trying to get us to work with them. And I think it's a really exciting time to be involved in direct-to-consumer because there's so many people entering the market.
Fantastic. Before we go into the practicalities, I want to take a moment to zoom out and ask, how did we get here? Why have we got to this point that direct-to-consumer has become such an important part of the mix for not just mobile games companies, but just games companies in general? And I'm going to go to Tayber first because, as he mentioned, very much the pretty girl of this corporate dance. I'd be interested to hear your perspective from the front lines.
Yeah, I think mobile games especially started off in a place where growth for studios, it was a lot easier than it is now. And there was a lot of organic growth, and people were really more interested in scaling up their user base. But as the business has matured, servicing your customers has become increasingly important, especially with the changes to performance marketing over the last 2 years. Retaining your customers is really, really important. And given the margins that the platforms charge, it's very beneficial to be able to not just connect with your customer, but also get a much better margin on your purchases.
Fantastic. All right.
So strengthening what Tayber mentioned here, I think there were 2 pivotal points. First one, September 2020. iOS 14 opt-in, opt-out, change in privacy. So that led to a massive erosion in margin. I think you guys know now it's harder to target you. It's more expensive to target you. Publishers, we saw that publishers have 2 choices, either consolidation or creative ways to expand margins, just like Tayber said. And one of the main ways are direct-to-consumers to its various forms, web shops, sideloading, etc. And another pivotal point is August 13th, Epic Games versus Apple. I think it led to a massive chain of events when it comes to regulations. The publishers are more willing to reach out to consumers to do the extra effort to foster the relationship directly. And there are obviously geographically changes both in Europe and US, antitrust lawsuits, and we can deep dive into it later.
I think it is fascinating because people often talk about the games industry and they're like, how influential are we? And it's like, well, the thing that really cracked open the duopoly was the lack of availability of Fortnite. That was the thing that customers could understand, that regulators could understand. Games as this form of mass culture was able to lead to major change within society, which we're now benefiting from as businesses and starting to see here. But Hussam as well, I'm interested to see as well what the perspective is on a more global basis too, because I think a lot of the time when we think about this, we're thinking about what was happening with the app stores in Europe or the US. But in terms of the rest of the world, and especially in a region like MENA, the market maybe was a bit more open in certain places. So were there already more direct-to-consumer opportunities within that market than maybe the rest of the world has woken up to?
I think we've been doing direct-to-consumers for the longest time, since the establishment of the company, 2013. And that was just like before it was like really mainstream. And the main reason behind that, and still until today, is there is no, like the Arabic-speaking market, like 250 million people, are really, really underbanked and unbanked. So no one has like credit cards. In major markets where credit card is the main, the main medium for you to buy anything from the App Store, it is just not available. And I believe that whenever I talk to people in Europe and the US, they take a credit card for granted. It's very accessible, very easy, Apple Pay. But when you talk to people in Egypt, for example, or in an emerging market like Iraq, it is a very cash-based economy. Even if you look at Uber and Careem in the region, 70% of all the transactions that happen are still happening in cash, where you pay the driver in cash and he will keep the rest for you in credit, which is a completely different way to think about it. So how all of these consumers will buy things from the App Store? So enabling third-party payments and enabling easy ways for people to go to a supermarket, give the guy some cash, and then it will charge their account immediately, or use like a mobile wallet or a DCB, is a major, and still till today, it did not improve, which is still good for us, but it's not very easy for people to buy things from digital goods online.
Absolutely. And so we're seeing there the kind of factors behind the emergence is how do you reach consumers across the world effectively? How do we navigate past stores that maybe have their interests in mind more than our own? How do we actually build and establish a relationship with a community so that the people who are most invested in the game are the ones who are able to have the biggest relationship? So I think once you start hearing those things starting to develop, you start getting towards the benefits of taking such an approach. And David, in terms of Xsolla, I mean, you are willing to extol the virtues of a direct-to-consumer approach, but what are the big benefits for a business to start thinking, how can we just directly reach a customer and start talking to them?
Yeah, I think some of the things that we talked about directly relate into that. So, for instance, I think the biggest benefit of all is the change in margin, right? So number one, how do you de-risk that 30% that you're paying as a tax to the app stores? And it's very easy to just say, I'll just work with the app stores, everything is built for me, I can just do it. But it's becoming harder and harder and harder to eke money out of that type of a relationship. Second of all, and this was brought up on the last panel, and I think Epic and Fortnite is a great example of this, and I was at Epic when the lawsuits were filed. But the idea of community, right? That is your direct-to-consumer relationship. So what do you do with that community, okay? We're so used to, I think, pushing that community to the place of where we know that they should go buy. Push them to Steam, push them to the app stores. But why? We built this great relationship, and they want to talk to us. They want to know more about these games. They want to tell us what they love about these games. They want to know how they can get more for their money. And so now we have these destinations where we can bring them to. The difficulty is it's a behavioral change, right? And so what we've been trying to explain to people is we still want you to play on your device, but we want you to pay on the web. And so we give more value to them in that place where we're trying to move them to. And over time, hopefully they'll associate value with the web transactions, but they always know that they go play somewhere else. And once you have that relationship established and you can make that behavioral change, I think that there's so much that can be done through the web stores that is not just commerce, right? Now you can look at this as, and Fortnite was a good example of this too, why keep pushing all of this data over to the web stores that we should be having a better understanding of? Why not be able to talk to the customer about other things that they like? How do we think about what our next game is and the game beyond that we want to build or make that's going to delight these customers? If we have a successful piece of IP, how do we talk to the customer in terms of, would you like to see this be turned into a television show or something linear? And then we can push it to you there. We can spin up a cloud app and push you linear content through this website. So all these things that you can do with direct to consumer, it requires behavioral change, and I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg on that. But there's so much to be done here, and we're cultivating these relationships. Why not really leverage them?
I mean, you were nodding a lot there, Maor, as well. One of the things that really just jumped out at me there as well was about direct-to-consumer actually increases the amount of power the consumer has in the transaction, in the process. And do you agree with that as well? And why is that important as well in the relationship for a games business with players?
Totally agreed. Strengthen what David just named here. So economics 101, middleman, and especially if it's a monopoly, it's the biggest burden on the economy. So just cutting the middleman, selling directly to the consumer, you're being able to give way more value to your players, create retention, loyalty, and obviously expand the margins. Taking that to UA and just feed the ecosystem, you get X on every dollar that you put into UA once again. So that's basically it.
Fantastic. And Tayber as well. I mean, I'll be interested to hear two things from you. Is first of all, your perspective about what the big benefits have been in terms of your direct-to-consumer approach. But I'd also be interested to hear about what some of the challenges you've had in that approach, because it's definitely a shift for sure.
Yeah, I might be interested, by show of hands, how many people here are game developers or like actually working on building games? Okay, cool, sweet. So the benefits, not just the margin, but the way that we like to think about it a little bit is, we build games that we have relationships with customers for a really long time. So some of our games are 10 years old, and we have customers that have been, our customers for a really long time. And so let's just say on the really high end, you might have a customer that spends $100,000 with your company over the course of 10 years. Apple and Google get 30% of that, so they get $30,000 and we get $70,000. So is that an Apple or Google customer, or is it a Thinking Ape customer? I would like to think that they're my customer, and Apple and Google would say, well, no, they're our customers. And so that creates like a bit of an awkward relationship with the platforms where my customer might not only be playing on, let's say, an iPhone, they might actually be playing on multiple devices and multiple accounts, and they might be playing multiple games. And so I have a real incentive to protect that relationship, because without my customers, I don't have a company. And it's really easy in the past, I think, we used to be a little naive and arrogant in that we would say like, oh, a customer stopped, playing your game. Well, we'll just do some UA and find another whale. We'll just buy more customers. It'll be fine. Well, you can't really do that anymore. And also, it was kind of a waste, because once you have a customer, you really want them to be, with you for life. You want to build that relationship. So, if you can find a way to communicate with your customers and drive them to make purchases in a way that benefits them as well, and you can use that margin to give them more value, then they'll be happier and you'll be happier. So some of the things that we're able to do with our web shop is we've built a VIP program where we have somebody who reaches out to our VIP players and just asks them what they want from the bundles and builds custom bundles for them. And we're able to do that because we're able to pass on some of that margin to the player and to the customer. So,
but even knowing who those players are, you may not have known before, correct?
I mean, in our case, we do. We have like a really good analytics system, and but not all game developers have that kind of technology. So I think we're a little bit different in that we started as a chat company and we have really good technology. But if you know, are a relatively small developer or you don't have that technology, then you might not have access to, you know, all of the purchase history for your customers in a way that you know, is cross-platform, for example. You know, and so working with, you know, a partner allows you to get access to some tools that you might not otherwise have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, in terms of that relationship with the stores, you know, we discussed this a little bit last week before, you know, we had this session today. You know, we were reminiscing back to the earlier days of the industry where when the stores arrived, they offered something of genuine value to every developer. They offered a global reach. They offered an opportunity to get to market successfully in a way that simply wasn't possible at the time. But that the value of that has declined over time, partly because, first of all, the developer is now doing so much of the lift in terms of actually maintaining and supporting that community, that what are the stores doing? But I think, and going back to you, Hussam, is actually this realization that the stores weren't really reaching every part of the world. They were notionally available in all of these places, but often to very small audiences, often not aligned to what those audiences actually needed. So in terms of like the direct-to-consumer strategy as a final benefit, do you think that one of its most important benefits is unlocking this market of players in parts of the world that otherwise wouldn't be able to be reached without it?
Of course, one of the major things in the Middle East is the concentration of wealth is in the hands of a small group of people to start with. So also, even before iOS 14 and the change, reaching this segment of the players was hard. Now it is a nightmare. Just finding these. So just like commenting on, like when you find a player, you will need to really keep them. I think this is crucial in today's like changing world in the gaming space. But I believe that in the Middle East in particular, and I'm just like focusing on the Middle East because it's a very interesting market to just understand and try to figure out the details around it. Just understanding that it is a market of VIPs to start with. So in our case, when we were doing direct to consumers, we were not thinking about like, I want to reduce the 30% margin of Apple, or I want to do anything. I just wanted these players to spend more. Because once you have a VIP player, you cannot just treat them as any other player. They need to be really handheld. And this moment of conversion from a regular player who is spending $10, $20 to becoming a spender of $20,000 can happen over a message that you have sent them, or like you had like a very nice reply to that person, and then he would ask you like, okay, so if I am buying $10,000 worth of coins, will you give me a discount? If he was like having this interaction only with the App Store, he wouldn't have like that luxury. Of course, there are players who are spending directly on the App Store without talking to anyone, but we found that we were able to convert players to spend millions of dollars in the App Store, like with wire transfers, and you will need to build a lot of trust. Now my mission is to try to reach a bigger audience, given like we are offering other alternative payment methods in the Middle East for more and more, and providing loyalty and providing other stuff. It is happening. I think that there is something very interesting happening in the region.
Fantastic. And I think we'll also return to that VIP point as well with Tayber as well on the community side shortly. But I think one of the things that you mentioned there, obviously you have to build relationships, but one of the key things you actually have to do is build infrastructure, because to be able to own that relationship, you have to build the mechanisms through which people can purchase, through which people can make payments using different methods, but also through which you can maintain that communication channel. So, I mean, you know, in terms of the Appcharge perspective as well, what are the most important things that a developer in this room needs to be thinking about when it comes to building their direct-to-consumer strategy in terms of the infrastructure point? What are the key things they need to be gathering to be able to do it effectively?
I'd like to add on what Hussam just said. So it's not only a VIP market. It's a genre dependent, right? If you're social casino, you're mid-core, you're hardcore, you have many VIPs and you need to take good care of them. But I think one of the main gospels of direct-to-consumer that it forces you to adopt new technologies in order to foster these relationships. So if you're casual or you match 3, you need a ways to automate communications with the players without a human touch, because it's not like a $10,000 or $20,000 VIP. You just need to reach to players on high scale, and it's a part of the infrastructure that we're talking about. First and foremost, the ability to identify the player and to dynamically show him the right storefront, the right offer to the right player. First and foremost, merchant of record. That's the basic on the gateway in terms of like paying the taxes, staying under regulation, coverage across the world. It's also one of the key infrastructures that you need. And third, what we like to present, and one of Appcharge's flagship is monetization tools. And again, this is really depends on the kind of the category of the game that you're at. If you're a highly LTV-driven game, you'll have certain retention and monetization features, unlike more casual ones. And the lines of communications clearly. There are many ways to communicate. Depends if you're looking to a more white glove communication with VIPs, or it's a casual and you want to on scale to mass messaging on Messenger, on WhatsApp, on email, and you want to be able to send even to the ones where you do send en masse. You want to be able to send it a personalized offer. So you need to identify him, and you need to have the tools to send personalized offers on scale.
Absolutely. And David, what's your thoughts about this as well? Because, I mean, actually, for a lot of businesses in the room, they're thinking, oh, I really want to be able to do this, but is this going to be a lot of work? Like, what can I do to make sure that this level of work is something I can manage, or my team can manage as a business?
So I'll start by saying yes to everything that was said here. I think those are all really good points. And I think that it's difficult. You're blessed, I think, in your game if you have whales that you can talk to like that to begin with. I think that aside from all the plumbing and the tools that we're talking about, merchant of record is one of those really important things. To your point as well, like having more payment methods that people can take is another one of those. You don't want to lose a player or a transaction because you can't put something in front of that person that allows them to transact. So we're at over 800 payment partners for that reason at this point. I think when you find those whales and you have access to those whales, having a way to be able to transact with them seamlessly, because it's not the normal transaction. It can be more than a $10,000 transaction. And how do you KSA those people and know that you can transact with them easier in the future once an initial KSA is done? And then I think one of the other big challenges which we're working to solve right now is, as we talk about these direct-to-consumer relationships and the web shop, one of the difficulties has been figuring out, like, on your UA, how is your spend being attributed to things as you go from store to web shop and things like that. We just implemented, I think we're the first company to do it too, we just implemented a direct integration with AppsFlyer. It's server to server. It allows you to basically get all of that data immediately. And know exactly where that spend is going, how it's being attributed, whether there's value in the things that you're spending on. You can A/B test, figure out if you need to change your campaigns and do things otherwise. It's a pretty cool new feature, and I think it's one of those things that's missing from this piece of what we're talking about. If anybody's interested in taking a look at it, you can look it up at xsolla.pro/AppsFlyer. There's a whole bunch of documentation on it.
Absolutely. And I think it's really interesting as well about how much of this conversation is focusing about how you can, at scale, do something that we all instinctively understand on a very personal level, which is build respect amongst basically the community who really power what your business does. And you know, Tayber and I were talking about this last week about this is at scale, getting to the point of what happens at my local coffee shop, which I visit every single day religiously. So now I get 2 stamps on my stamp card instead of 1 every time I buy a drink, because they're like, you've bought so much from us and you're so consistently here, we're going to reward you. It's about kind of returning that personal relationship to that dynamic within mobile games. And so Tayber there, I was going to ask about that point around how are you using direct-to-consumer strategies to really reinforce that sense of community around your games? You know, how do you really bring those people to make them feel not just like they're spending lots of money, but they're actually actively shaping the thing they love?
Oh man, that's a huge question. So I think, you know, you kind of highlighted that having the infrastructure around building those relationships is important. And I don't know that, you know, companies like Xsolla and Appcharge are going to help you to necessarily build all of that stuff, where there's obviously a lot of tools that you can leverage. But at the end of the day, when you are a developer and you have a small percentage of people that are going to give you money, a very, very small percentage of total players ever convert, you have to find strategies to connect with those people no matter what. It's the most important thing for you to do as a business. Even if you're you know, a more casual game, finding out who the biggest people in your economy are is really pivotal. So there's a lot of ways to do that, whether you're connecting with them over email, you can get, you know, in-app chat tools. Like we use HelpShift as a customer support tool, which gives you the ability to chat with somebody within the game. We have huge Discord communities. We have native chat in our game, and we have native group chat, and we even had our own, you know, native chat support. But we still found that Discord was a really powerful place to build community. You know, even things like, there's some games where I've talked to other developers where they're like, we don't have chat, but we have these Facebook groups, and like all of our players go to Facebook and they talk about the game in these Facebook groups. Well, like, put your hand up and say like, hi, I work at the game company. And a lot of times developers are afraid to talk to their customers that way, and they're afraid to connect face to face with these people and be like, yeah, we're the face of this company. But in today's, like, you know, world where you have these people who are connected to games for a really long time and they want to be part of that community, it's okay to sort of like we create sort of fake personas. So, you know, we have different names when we talk to the community, but we're in there every day talking to them and working with them. And you can go to people and be like I said at the start, like, what do you want to see in this shop? What are the things that you've bought? Like, hey, we have all your receipts. We know what you bought in the past, and you bought this item, you know, 2 months ago. Did you like it? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? And then you can leverage that to build, you know, new things to sell people.
Because if you've got the relationship with them directly through an app store, you sort of, it seems to be that there's this huge black box that's going on as a result of that middleman being present. Yeah. Whereas by actually owning the relationship, you're able to go straight to your community and hear from someone.
And like, ideally you have the tool to connect with them directly in your app, but if you don't have that, leverage whatever tools you can to just talk to them.
Yeah, and I think absolutely that point. And also, you know, you were really hammering home the point that you were making earlier as well, Maor, which was different games are built in different ways, which will lead to different approaches working within different communities. So, I mean, have you seen any examples of direct consumer strategies that you think have been really effective in like different genres and different approaches? So, you know, you mentioned obviously that a match-free game might take a different approach to another one. Have you seen any great case studies out in the wild that really sort of think that's the perfect way of doing it?
Various, of course. So I'd like to refer to what Tayber said. You need both technology and strategy. Something we both support in Appcharge. Our team comes with a great experience from the monetization world, like companies like Moonactive and Playtika and NeoGames and Fiber. So we're here to share the knowledge. The human capital is the most precious thing we have, and we derive our futures from that. And we have several case studies, both from either casual or social casino, which is a totally different strategy. And we stitch every game to his own size, a suit to his own size, and relying on our experience from previous companies or with clients that we have, we're offering the best solution, and obviously we're iterating alongside with our partners. And retention features for in web shop is one thing, and communication with the players is another thing, and it's other tools that we're supplying as well. Everything, of course, supported with data and the ability to manage everything from one place. So Appcharge reinforces the game developer. Everything is managed from one place. You don't need to have double manage on two platforms. We're the extension of the game, and I think this is one of the secrets. So you need to understand the internal deliberations of every mobile game. Mobile games have limited, finite resources, and you need to build a kind of technology that reinforces it and doesn't create extra labor, like extra work.
Absolutely, and I think it's also about, as you're saying, exercising that flexibility to find the right approach, find the right model, because when you are direct to consumer, you can start really thinking, well, is a subscription approach going to work best here? Is it going to be this approach in terms of in-game consumables? You have that chance to speak directly to people and build what works for them, which I think is fantastic. But I reckon I've got time for one more question before I'm hopefully going to have an opportunity for someone in the audience to ask something. I think the real question, though, is just what comes next for direct-to-consumer? Like, how can people get potentially ahead of the curve? You know, obviously there's been a lot of developments in terms of the competition and regulatory space, but we saw the FT report a week ago that the European Commission is looking to pause some of its competitive actions against big tech companies while the new Trump administration comes in. So do we see that in the future we're still going to be seeing more room for direct-to-consumer strategies continuing to evolve? Where do we think this is going to go next? I'm going to go for Hassan.
I think it will most definitely evolve, and it will open more for more people. For me, I'm seeing an opportunity in new markets that absolutely have no access to the App Store, especially now with the changes, especially in the Middle East. More stability will open up the opportunity to banking and the enablement of banking and the enablement of people to want to consume content in different mediums, not only in gaming, but anything that is digital. Allowing people to buy things using alternative payments is crucial, looking at like a market like Syria. Once it stabilizes, it will take a long time to streamline people buying directly from the App Store, and it will be much easier to go through alternative payments to go there. And it's a big market, supposedly, and it will be very much cash-driven, very similar to what happened in Iraq. So if from a technology point of view, I'm not seeing a lot of changes happening next year, but for markets, I'm seeing a lot of opportunities.
I think it's going to be a remarkable year for direct-to-consumer. We're going to see major technology breakthroughs when it comes to communicating with the players, starting from dynamic game hubs to automated social media ways to communicate with the player, sending on multiple channels segmented offers to players to lure them in, and sideloading. Sideloading is going to be very big. Moving players to install through APK in Android and hopefully soon across the world in iOS, not through the Apple Store, will be major. I think it's going to be one of the biggest tectonic shifts in the industry as well.
I think that's absolutely correct. You have to remember that we're in V1 of all of this. It's still very new. And I think what you have now is you have a lot of things that are trying to play within the rules of the app stores to not run afoul, because we're all trying to make sure that our customers are still compliant, that their games can stay listed, because the app stores are currently still the best means of distribution. But that could change in the future. You know, web can become a better means of distribution. You can have direct links once you have enough reach to your consumer, where you can sideload or have other efficient means of doing so. Cloud is becoming cheaper and cheaper and better with its latency. And how can I spin things up to play directly? You have to remember too, like, platforms are what they are right now because it's been the means of the way that things are done. But as technology gets better and more efficient, the thing that's better for the consumer is always what we're trying to drive as builders of things, because we're here to delight our customers. And so, in my opinion, you always want to be able to have your customer play anytime, anywhere, in any way they want to. So how many different devices can I make this available to where the technology of a phone or a computer is less important, but the fact that I can get a stream of something or a build of the game that's playing anywhere, and it's familiar to them. So how can I do all these things and reach the consumer, knowing that I have certain rules that I have to play within, knowing that this is what the technology and what everybody is moving towards now, but a year from now, 5 years from now, I think we're going to see a very different picture of what this looks like, and it's going to be driven by what the consumer wants and what we can give them. Because if we give that consumer what they want, they will throw more money at us.
Oh man, so I have a couple different answers to this question. So I think, over in the short term, one of the most interesting things is, these two gentlemen have been quite, polite to each other, but they're viciously competing. And there's other people viciously competing with them. And so as a developer, what's really exciting is just seeing all the different ways that they are trying to leverage their technology to offer value, not just to developers, but also to consumers. And so for a while, it was quite slow moving, but things are accelerating, and there's a lot of really interesting technology being developed, and that's really exciting as a developer. But the other thing is that, last year I said, email is back, baby. Like, it's the year of email. And this year is the web is back, baby. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she loves to game. And she recently discovered Poke games. And now that's all she wants to play, because she can select all the games, and she shows me, like, when I click here, look, it shows me more fashion games. And when I click here, and there's this whole little recommendation thing, and her experience is completely different as a gamer than mine will ever be. And there's a new emerging market, and this has been a trend for a while, is that young people who play games now, their first gaming device is not a console, it's a phone, right? I saw a really interesting video where there was a developer talking about how they had a demo and they had a controller set up. And everybody that came up that was young was trying to use the touch screen because they didn't know how to use a controller, right? So things are going to be a lot different in the long term, that kids growing up today have completely different experiences that are not going to be shaped by at the Apple ecosystem. They're going to play games wherever they can find them, and they also don't care about graphics. They just want interesting experiences. Roblox, for example, shows us that. So. The market overall, I think, is going to be one that is quite fragmented and dynamic, whether it's side loading. I don't think it's going to be defined as much by technology as it is by generational shift, in that media is not really confined to a tablet, a computer, or a TV. It's all just everywhere.
And on that note, we are actually out of time. So what I'm going to suggest is, if you do have a question for the panelists, please do grab them after, on the way out. I'm sure that they'll be happy to spare maybe 2 minutes, maybe not anymore. I mean, they are experts, as we've established, so they might be very busy providing their expertise everywhere. But in the meantime, could you please give them a round of applause? They've been fantastic.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Much appreciated.